Hello there, and welcome back to our Blender character tutorial series. We're going to start basically where we left off from the last part. First we're going to do some sculpting here on the body to fix some things, and then we'll move on to the next step. So as you can see here, I'm just using the clay strips brush, fixing this area right here, and then smoothing it out. The clay strips brush is very useful because it allows you to easily add volume in certain areas of the mesh. So you first, add some clay strips and you smooth them out, and that basically increases the volume. You can also use the inflate brush, although it's harder to precisely use it. Now, if you want to do the opposite, to remove some volume, then I recommend the scrape brush. So yeah, if you want to add volume, clay strips. If you want to remove volume, the scrape brush. Now, obviously, there are other ways of manipulating the mesh, but this is how I do things. So once again, just to remind you guys, if you're holding just a regular brush, for example like clay strips, if you press and hold shift, it will automatically turn into a smooth brush. So you can just, for example, select clay strips, add a couple of strips to the body, and then just immediately press and hold shift and smooth them out. This will smooth out your workflow, make you just work a little bit faster. And over time it adds up. Here I'm just using the crease brush to get a little bit more detail. And just to remind you guys, I stream pretty much every day on Twitch, except the weekends. So, you know, if you want, come and hang around. If you have any questions, feel free to join us, and hopefully I'll be able to answer whatever questions you have. This whole tutorial series has been streamed on Twitch. So yeah. So I think this is the process of retopology. So for anybody who's wondering, what is retopology? Why do we retopologize things? What's the benefit? Why go through the hassle of retopologizing? First of all, we sculpted this high poly head with all the detail. But for example, if we wanted to rig this head, or maybe put it in a game, or maybe animate it, well, it would be super dense, and it would pretty much, well, not pretty much, it would be impossible to just rig or animate or put in a game. Because it would be, if let's say you put it in a game, it would just lag the engine so much that it needs to be optimized, basically. So what is retopology? Retopology is basically grabbing, for example, like a plane like this. I'm grabbing a bunch of planes, connecting them all up in a certain way, and basically having good clean topology, which I'm going to show you how to do, and projecting that on the high resolution face or body. So just let's talk about why. Well, first of all, there's plenty of benefits of doing it. The first benefit is that it allows you to rig your character, as I said earlier. You know, so you can rig your character, pose it, animate it. You can also put it in a game. Another benefit is that if you retopologize a mesh, if you decide to do a render, the render would be much faster. Another benefit is that, let's say you're working with a character and you retopologize it, your workflow, or I should say your yes, it's called workflow. It will be much faster because, for example, Blender might lag less with a retopology mesh than if you were working with just a high poly mesh. Especially if you have a really weak computer. If you have a weak computer, you know, your Blender might lag, but if you retopologize it, then you know it might run smoother. So yeah, as you can see here, there are plenty of benefits of doing it, and I do it for all my characters pretty much. So I'm going to show you how to do it. So if you're wondering, like, you know, how I'm connecting these faces, basically I'm pressing and holding Control. Well, first I'm clicking on one vertex, then I press and hold Control, and then I click on the second one, and then it automatically selects it, the closest path connecting them. And then I can press F to fill the face. Now, if you're wondering, okay, I understand retopology is good, but how do I retopologize? Like, how do I know exactly where, you know, and how to, you know, get the topology to be correct? Well, every face is unique. So if you're going for like a, you know, an animation, you need to have clean topology. But if you're going for just maybe like a simple render, or maybe like a simple like game character, then you don't have to worry too much about topology. You know, it still needs to have some, it still has some rules, but you don't have to like follow them properly, because it's not really gonna matter too much. But yeah, if you're going for like facial animations, then yeah, you need to do it properly. So the way I did it is I went on YouTube and I googled face retopology, and I watched Danny Mac's tutorial videos on face and body retopology, and that's basically exactly what I'm doing right here on stream, on the video. I'm literally just following his tutorial. I have it in like a separate, a screen, and basically I'm just playing the video, seeing what he does, and then I basically do it on my character. And that's pretty much what I do for all of my characters. I use the same topology on all my characters. Now, if you're wondering, well, hold on, didn't you say that every face has unique topology? Well, that's true, but because I personally don't need the topology to be super perfect, I just reuse the same topology on all my characters, and I have no issues with it because I do simple renders that basically don't really need perfect topology. Plus, I also don't do facial animations, which also, a side benefit of not doing those animations is that, as I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. So yeah, if you're wondering, what? Well, basically just watch denMac's face and body retopology tutorials, and you will see basically how I got there. Or you can just keep on watching this video and then, follow what I do. Now, I know somebody's gonna probably ask me, why don't you use the poly tool in Blender? Poly build tool, I think it's called. And to tell the truth, I've never used it. And I personally don't really feel the need to use it. This workflow that I'm using right now seems pretty good to me. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that I've never used it, I don't have experience with it, and I'm happy with what I already have. So here I'm merging some vertices. So the way you do that is you select, for example, 2 vertices, and then you just press M, and you get that like small window pop up, and then you just click on center, and it will basically merge the 2 vertices at center of each other. Now, I know somebody's gonna ask me, is there any way to bypass, doing retopology? And the answer is actually yes. If you use a base mesh that's already retopologized, you can bypass retopology because, well, it's already done. The downsides of using a base mesh is that sometimes the character that you want to make doesn't really fit with the base mesh that you already have. One way to bypass that is to have multiple base meshes, but obviously that will require you to actually make all of them. But yeah, if you are tired of doing retopology on all of your characters, just make a couple of base meshes with different body types and different face types, and that way you can just edit those meshes and bypass retopology. Another way to bypass retopology is to use add-ons that help you out with that. For example, Quad Remesher. Quad Remesher is an add-on that basically allows you to remesh a mesh into quads. It's very useful, but unfortunately it's not free. There are other free alternatives, but they're not as good. So feel free to experiment, try them out. Who knows, maybe they will help you out. But nothing beats manual retopology. People in the industry pretty much always do manual retopology. So once again, here at the end, I'm merging vertices together to get this nice clean topology. So let's talk about the actual process itself. First, I'm using two things. On the right, you will see that I'm using mirror to obviously mirror the whole retopology mesh, so you only have to work on it from one side. Subdivision to subdivide it a little bit. And finally, and most importantly, shrink wrap modifier. That basically shrink wraps, or I guess it attaches the mesh or projects the mesh on top of the sculpted face. You can see here that the target is head, so basically it just snaps on top of the head mesh, which is our sculpted head. And then at the very top you will see the magnet, like a blue magnet. That's basically the snap mode enabled, and you can see here that next to the magnet there's like a white square. Basically that signifies that I've enabled face snap mode, so that whenever I move a vertex or an edge or a face, it snaps to the closest face. And these two together help you a lot to retopologize your mesh. Are there other ways and other tools? Yes. This is just how I do it. Also, another thing to keep in mind is, if you look at the right, the subdivision modifier, I have set it to simple. I recommend that you do the same. It will give you better results once you apply the modifier. Just set it to simple and leave it like that. Can you use the other option, Catmull-Clark option? Yes, but I recommend simple for better results. At least that's what I use. So once again, I'm not really going to explain too much, you know, why I'm adding these loop cuts and how I know that. Basically, as I said, I'm watching the Danny Max tutorial video and literally doing exactly what he's doing. If you compare his mesh and mine, they're identical. So here I made a mistake. I made 6 faces instead of 5, but later on I fixed this mistake. As you can see, there's a lot of video cuts because I basically look at the video, usually watch it for about 10 seconds or so, then I pause the video and then I add the vertices / edges. And I said, you know, to kind of cut it out a little bit so the video goes a little bit smoother. So I think it was at this point here I realized that something is not correct, and I feel like any moment now I should be able to, there we go, I'm counting the numbers for the faces, and there we go, I deleted the one of them at the end because it was one too many. And from here on out, I just once again follow the tutorial and yeah. Now if you're wondering, okay, alright, I got you, dude. So how do I get a custom topology for my specific character? And unfortunately, I have bad news. If you go to YouTube, you will see some Retopology tutorials. There's a couple, well, a couple good ones. There's some other ones, but they're not good. If you want a custom topology for your specific character, unfortunately, there isn't really many tutorials for that. So you just have to experiment on your own. And don't forget that, once you connect all the dots together, make sure that you move the vertices around so they create equal squares everywhere. But actually, soon enough, I'm going to show you how to also do that with a sculpt brush to make your life a little bit easier. Here we go. I'm selecting the slide relax brush right here. And in the brush settings right here, I checked the mesh boundary box. You can also enable wireframe here so you can see how the brush works. So basically, to use this brush, you just press and hold Shift and then you drag. And as you can see here, it's slowly fixing the topology by making all the faces equal in size. That doesn't always do it, but it helps you quite a lot. So basically all I'm doing is pressing and holding Shift and just dragging the brush. Now as you can see here, I'm specifically avoiding the nose and the mouth area, because if you use it in that area, it kind of ruins the mesh. Now, as you can see here, I demonstrated that, and you will see in a second, once I go back into edit mode, that certain parts have been a little bit ruined, but you can always just manually fix that. And certain times, depending on the topology and the shape of the face, this brush works really well. And in some cases, it works really terrible. So, it's a double-edged sword. Now, because I enabled mesh boundary, which basically means that the brush will not affect the boundary of the mesh, it means that these vertices right here at the edge of the mesh will not get affected, so you have to move them around manually, as you can see I'm doing right now. But as you can see here, the rest of the mesh has nice equal quads. Well, most of them. So as you can see here, this is what I'm talking about. Right here, it kind of moved these vertices near the edge of the mouth, and now I basically have to fix them again. But considering that it fixed the rest of the mesh really easily, it's definitely a tool that has more positives than negatives. As you can see here, I'm just having a little bit of trouble here moving these vertices around so they'll go back to how they're supposed to be. But we get there at the end. Now, if you're wondering, wow, this tool doesn't seem very worth it, if you have to spend a lot of time fixing this, problem here. Well, don't worry about it. It's just me being dumb and not figuring out how to move the vertices around. Usually, if the tool or if the slide relax brush messes up, a small portion of the mesh, for example, like here the mouth, it's usually an easy fix, but I'm just having a little bit of trouble with it. Of course, if you don't feel confident using it, you can always just move the vertices manually to get nice equal quads. And there we go. I shade smooth the mesh. And here I decide to do a little bit more tweaking. Don't forget that if you want to zoom on a specific edge slash face slash vertex, you just select whatever you want to zoom in onto, and then you press the full stop key on your numpad, and it will automatically zoom in on whatever you have selected. So here I'm just positioning the vertices so they're more closer to the edge of the eye. Another thing I did is, if you look on the right side where the shrink wrap modifier is, you will see 4 blue buttons. The one on the far left that looks like a upside down triangle, if you click on that button and enable it, it will basically allow you to see in edit mode how the shrink wrap modifier actually looks in object mode. And this will help you out maybe to position the vertices where they need to be. So I think now we're going to be starting the body retopology. And once again, I'm following Danny Mac's retopology tutorial for the body, and literally doing exactly what he's doing in his tutorial. Now his tutorial is, if I remember correctly, in ZBrush, but when it comes to retopology, it doesn't really matter what software you use. It's mostly the same in pretty much every software. You might have different tools in different softwares, but the actual process, the actual workflow is usually the same. And just to remind you guys, we're using the same process that we use for the face. We have the mirror, and then subdivide, and then shrink wrap modifiers on the right. And at the very top, we have the snap mode enabled for faces. And we're using the same workflow. Now here, it's a very interesting thing I did. I duplicated the faces up there by pressing Shift D, but before I duplicated it, I made sure that the snap mode at the very top, the magnet, is turned off. A shortcut for that, by the way, is Shift Tab. Because if you don't turn it off, you're gonna have some issues when moving things around. So first you turn it off, then you duplicate, move it into position, and then you turn it back on, and then now it will snap on properly. There you see, I just turned it off, I moved it down, and then I turn it on. Once again, Shift Tab is the shortcut, or you can just click on the magnet itself to turn it on and off. Now, as you can see here, Retopology is fairly boring, but there is another way to retopologize bodies and faces. It's a slightly faster method. It still takes a lot of work, but who knows, maybe you'll like it. The way you do it is you grab a retopologized body from previous character, for example, that you already made, and you import it into your current project. And the topology itself is already there. All you need to do is just snap it on top of your current character. So that's another tip I can give you guys if you want to save yourself a little bit of time. Now, sometimes the character that you're currently working on and the character that was, or a topology from a previous character might not be perfect. So this method doesn't always work. By the way, right there, I pressed Ctrl R to add a couple of loop cuts, and then you can use the mouse wheel to select how many loop cuts you want, and then you press left click and it applies it. Right there I deleted some faces. The way you delete stuff is you select what you want to delete and you press the delete key on your keyboard. You will get that menu, and then from that menu you can select what you want to delete. I basically just selected faces in that small pop-up menu. Right there, a second ago, I enabled clipping in the mirror modifier so that the mesh near the center clips together. If you don't do that, then the mesh will just go through each other. Once again, I just pressed the Shift D to duplicate the face, and then I moved it down. And once again, I just selected 4 vertices together, and I pressed F to fill them together. And that basically creates a face in between them. Now here, I disabled snap mode, and then I pressed SZ0, which basically scales the vertices along the Z so that they're all the same height. And here I'm doing the same thing I was doing before. Disabled snap mode, duplicated and moved it down. And you can also see me enabling and disabling that upside down triangle next to the shrink wrap modifier. Sometimes I have it enabled, sometimes I have it disabled. Try it out in your blend file to see what exactly it does. But you can kind of see it from the video. Once again, I'm using that scale along the Z-axis trick to make them all the same height. So I think around here somewhere, I started deviating from the actual denMac tutorial. Not because I wanted to deviate, you know, but because I just misunderstood what tutorial said, and I just basically made some slight adjustments without even realizing it. But it's not really a big deal. The topology at the end was still pretty much how I wanted it to be, so it didn't really matter. So basically what I'm using here is the Loop Tools Blender add-on. It comes automatically with Blender. All I did was select 2 loops, then I right-clicked, and at the very top it says Loop Tools. And then if you select that, you will see on the right bridge, and I clicked on that, and it basically bridges 2 loops. It's a pretty decent add-on. I recommend it. So here, once again, I'm using the Loop Tools add-on, and then just adding some loop cuts by pressing Ctrl R, and then using the mouse wheel button to scroll up and down to select how many loop cuts I want to add. So as you can see here, something was not adding up. So I had to do a little bit of improvising, moving things around, and basically had to kind of deviate from the tutorial a little bit. But in the end, we got a pretty good result. So as you can see here, I just extruded some loops here near the neck. I just moved them up. I made sure that snap mode at first was turned off. And then I turned it back on, and then I started snapping them onto the neck. Now if you're thinking, the quads are not all equal, the topology looks bad. Well, don't forget that we have that nice cool slide relax brush in sculpt mode, which will basically do 90% of the work for us when it comes to making all the quads equal. And here's that brush right now. As you can see here, it's doing a lot of work. And all you have to do is just do some minor tweaks here and there. And just like with the face, if you use this brush in certain areas of the body, for example the armpit like this, it might mess things around, so you have to kind of manually fix them. But once again, I think it's worth it, because while it's true that it messes up certain areas of the body and the face, it basically helps you with the rest of the areas. Alright, we're nearing the end of the video, and I want to thank you guys for staying and watching until the end. And yeah, so if everything goes correctly, next part is hopefully going to come out tomorrow, where we continue with the character. The retopology is pretty much done at this point. You can just add some more tweaks here and there. For example, I'm adding some more topology here for the belly button to give it a little bit more detail. Basically, all I did there was just inset the faces a little bit. This is a common tactic to get a little bit more topology around the belly button area. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, take care, have a lovely day, bye bye. Oh, and by the way, this is just a sneak peek at what's going to happen in the next episode.